We're going to do the top 50, but before we go into that, I'm going to kind of set the scene in a little bit. So this is feeding on from what George has said. The top 50, I've been doing top 50 lists now I worked out, since 2009. So that's quite a lot of top 50 lists. And I've only done, this is the second list I've done for blockchain games, so we did one in 2020. One of the surprising things, if you look back at that list, it's on BlockchainGamer.biz, quite a lot of the companies in that top 50 are still around. I was quite surprised actually looking at that. You would think everything that's happened in the space over the last few years would mean that a lot of companies have sort of left. That's not true. I think one of the interesting things about the blockchain game space is in the nicest sense, the game developers who are committed to this are cockroaches. You literally cannot kill them. In 2023, we had a lot of attempts to kill off blockchain games through various explicit and implicit methods. And as George pointed out, really hard funding round for most companies, but the vast majority kept going, and that was a surprise, I think, even to people in the space. George also sort of pointed out some of the facts around sort of the number of games. So slightly different numbers, but the same trend. So we have a thing called the Big Blockchain Game List. You can find that at BlockchainGame.com, list.com. And we had about 400 games discontinued last year, but then there were over 520 added. So even though sort of games went away, even more were added. So even in 2023, sort of the space was growing. And sort of every year, you're seeing new games announced. Every year, you're seeing new developers sort of announce themselves into the space. Every year, the developers are more experienced. They've gone through more challenges. Their product's getting better. Again, something George pointed out. There's some really... I mean, we could quibble about what a AAA game is. I think probably $25 million of funding to the developers is a reasonable rule of thumb. But there are quite a lot of, dozens of high-quality games coming out this year, which have some blockchain elements in them, which is not to say they're going to be hits, but every year, sort of the quality of the stuff is getting better and the quality of the developers is getting better. And I think the other thing that we've seen quite a lot of movement on last year is about onboarding, which is sort of a nasty term, I suppose, that we use in the blockchain game space quite a lot, but just about getting gamers into a game. Obviously, some games still using MetaMask, which I think is fine for the sort of committed audience. But if you want to go mass market, clearly you just want people to sign in with a single sign-in, the usual way you would sign into any game. And something else I think, which George also mentioned, was a big trend, starting trend in 2023, and we're going to see the sort of culmination of it, I hope, in 2024, was distribution. And I think particularly with app stores now allowing people to have games through Apple and Google with NFTs in them. And we're going to see the sort of feature set that games can operate opening up quite a bit in 2024 as Apple and Google get more comfortable with what people are doing. So those are some of the big trends. So yeah, getting on to the top 50. So top 50 lists are sort of notorious. I always think they're notorious. They're quite big chunks of work. And basically, you can only really please one company, and that's the company who's number one. Everyone else in the top 50 is sort of happy they're in the top 50, but they probably quibble about exactly where they are. And of course, everyone who's not in the top 50 is complaining and saying, why are we not in the top 50? So it's sort of a funny sort of process to go through, and a funny process once it's announced. But really, the reason we're doing this is we think the blockchain game sector is sort of underappreciated to some degree, certainly in the general game sector. Still seen as a sort of slightly weird group of people who probably care more than they should about money. I think sort of the last year has proven that not to be the case. I think it is amazing how many blockchain game developers are really committed to the sort of concepts of blockchain, which is really very simple. We talk a lot about sort of technology and stuff, but it's really about how will players react if you can let them own stuff in their games. And it can go much deeper than that. There's lots of cool things, other things we sort of can do, but that's really the sort of the crux, I think, for most gamers. You know, how would your experiences with games change if you actually owned the stuff in your games? So that's what I'm sort of trying to highlight in this list. as I say, feedback is always interesting, so feel free to sort of feedback on that. And another thing about these lists I always think what they're interesting for is to show trends. So a list in and of itself is a sort of finite thing, and next week maybe it will be be horribly outdated because some big bit of news will be announced and that will change everything. But I think over time, what's interesting is you sort of see trends happening, and you see sort of game developers sort of come into the list and go out and go up, and that's the really interesting thing. So this is a sort of this is not supposed to be a definitive statement. This is the latest chapter in what hopefully will be an ongoing series. Anyway, let's press a button and see what happens.
Yeah. On the way, we on the way. Need that money on the lay. Okay, no, I don't play. No. Hit the blunt and fly away. I want you to come and stay, but if you stay, you gon' have to make it. We about to make it.
Anyone who, apart from people who develop the games, did anyone recognise any of those games? Anyone? Oh, well, you're experts. You're an expert. Oh, that's good. A few experts. Okay, so those were all blockchain games. I'm not sure I could recognise all of them. The setup is we're going to show the videos, and the video's going to count down from 50 to 30, I think. And then when we get to 20 to 10, and then when we get to 10, I'll go through the slides individually and talk a little bit about those companies. But let's go through the first set. Okay, so that's the first set. I think we have only one in the audience. CM Games, number 50. Well done, Paul. Obviously, the full list and sort of explanations of why these companies are listed in top 50 is on BlockchainGamer.biz. I think the article is going live. Where are we? 10:30. So you've got 16 minutes to wait. But that's where to go and have a look at some of the explanations of what these companies are doing. I guess for a lot of people, these are just names that you've never heard of before. But in these cases, I think it is interesting that all these companies are doing sort of quite different things. We're not in the state of an industry where sort of everyone's making sort of free-to-play mobile games and sort of doing the same thing. We're definitely not in that. We're still in a very sort of experimental stage where there's lots of projects trying lots of different things, and that's clearly a good thing and fascinating, because we're still in the stage of sort of building up the primitive blocks that we're going to shape sort of the next 10 years. Okay, let's move on to the next set. Okay, hopefully some more familiar, becoming more familiar names in that set. And again, going back to something George said, I think it probably underestimated by the general games community is how many sort of very traditional games companies are now involved in the space in some kind. So in 2024, we'll see the first proper release from Ubisoft. So Ubisoft has been the sort of was the first sort of traditional blockchain, first traditional games company to get involved in blockchain in 2018. Now releasing its sort of first proper game after sort of many experiments in the space. But it's not just sort of Ubisoft. There's Zynga has its Sugartown sort of platform live. We had CCP announcing their sort of Eve blockchain reimaginings. Pretty much every South Korean, I think actually every big South Korean publisher is doing something in blockchain. Saying sort of similar approach in Japan, where they've sort of coalesced around the Oasis blockchain. I think pretty much every major Japanese publisher is involved in that project, and some of them are having their own sort of projects as well. Square Enix launched its first project at the end of last year. So, this is not, although there are a lot of sort of startups doing sort of crazy stuff, there are a lot of traditional games companies also spending their time and resources to sort of work out how this feeds into their, their long-term roadmaps. So I don't think this is clearly not going away now. This is sort of part of the industry. Okay, for the top 10, I will try a little bit of an explanation and a little sort of background to some of these companies. Okay, so at number 10, we have Horizon Blockchain Games. So a Canadian developer, I guess best known in the game space for its trading card game Skyweaver, but progressively is sort of now sort of focused on its infrastructure. So it has what was a wallet called the Sequence Wallet, and now has built that out into a sort of blockchain sort of onboarding platform called Sequence Builder, and that's actually powering quite a few games now. And this sort of goes back to what I was saying about onboarding, not the best phrase, but not just Horizon, but we're now seeing sort of lots of technology providers where they sort of handle the blockchain stuff. The user maybe doesn't even know they're playing a blockchain game. And clearly that's the stuff you need to hit a mass market audience. So that's number 10. Planetarium. Planetarium is a South Korean developer, again, been around in the space since 2018. As lots of companies do, it very much taken its own sort of kind of route through the industry. So it has sort of two games out. One's called Nine Chronicles and one's called Nine Chronicles M. Won't go into the differences between them, but they all run on their own blockchains. They took that decision very early on. They were going to basically create their own blockchain, and every game they had would have its own blockchain. And that's sort of actually where the industry is sort of going anyway. As George pointed out in his report, lots of new sort of L2 blockchains, L3 blockchains coming, and sort of games are moving to this sort of state where they're going to run on their own chain. Another interesting thing about Planetarium was they released Nine Chronicles M, which is a sort of idle RPG. Obviously, South Koreans are quite good at those games. But they released that. It's available on PC and also available through the App Store. So you can download that game through Apple and Google. I recommend you do that, just to get a feel of how they've basically put a fully on-chain game through the App Stores. Obviously, they have to deal with some of the rules around in-app purchases and stuff. I think they've done the best they can with that. And that game, I wouldn't say it's been a smash hit. I think it had 250,000 downloads in the first month, which obviously in the big scheme of things is small beer. But we're starting to see how people are using app stores to sort of get into that distribution mass market. Okay, Big Time Studios, again, it's been around for quite a while. I think 2018 it started out. From a pretty experienced team in terms of making games and also making blockchain. So the CEO was one of the guys behind Decentraland. And again, they've sort of been quite quiet building. It's a sort of a private alpha, beta at the moment. What was interesting this year is they released their token. So in the blockchain game space, we obviously talk a lot about tokens, probably too much. But their way of releasing their token was quite elegant. So they basically released it to people playing the game. So you couldn't buy it, you had to play the game. And they've taken a similar approach with their NFTs. You have to, in order to get those, you sort of craft them by playing the game. And I think that's a very sort of community-led feature. And we're seeing lots of people sort of follow that approach. So number 7, the Sandbox. Again, sounds like a broken record. They've been around for a long time, 2018. And I think this is one of the games that, really worth following this year. I mean, not really a game. It's I guess we can encapsulate it as Roblox. They attempt to make Roblox on a blockchain. So the idea is anyone can make an interactive experience. Anyone can make in-game sort of assets, and they can sell those assets on a marketplace. People can make experiences and invite their friends along. They might charge for that. Obviously, Sandbox's sort of focus over the last couple of years has been brands. So it's done hundreds of branding deals with everything from games like The Walking Dead to musicians to the Hong Kong government, all manner of things in there. And hopefully this year will be the year that Sandbox sort of comes into a sort of, I wouldn't say it'd be fully launched, but will sort of be available in a way it hasn't been up to this point. And we'll get to see, can it onboard mass market? Because I think that's definitely its potential. So Merit Circle, probably not that well known even in the blockchain game sector. Very blockchain, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. So started out as an Axie sort of DAO, and then became more like an investment vehicle, as lots of guilds did, and then started did an NFT drop, and then started making games, and then has followed the trend that we've mentioned several times, and is now developing its own sort of blockchain infrastructure called Beam. So I think they're interesting as they're a sort of an organization who wouldn't really exist outside of the blockchain game sector. It sort of shows how I think blockchain can impact lots of different sort of parts of product and community and tech. We'll see, I guess, if they can sort of synergize that to its full potential, but really interesting approach. So Pixels was I guess the big surprising success of 2023 in the blockchain game space. Again, it encapsulated lots of trends that we've been talking about. So it was on the Polygon chain. It moved to the Ronin chain, which is owned by Sky Mavis. And it went from about 5,000 players, but they were quite committed players. But on this new chain, it's now up to 170,000 daily players. Partly that's because they've done a play to airdrop to earn token release. So again, sort of highlighting some of the sort of trends about transitioning to new blockchains, to adding tokens to get more people in. As a game, it's sort of social RPG. It has sort of a whole bunch of community stuff. It's linked in with other sort of blockchain DAOs or organizations like Mochaverse and stuff like that. So again, interesting to see if they can sort of continue that growth. Immutable is probably at the moment the blockchain sort of gaming technology, which is really pushing sort of mass market adoption. Doesn't have a lot of games out yet, but this is, again, I think 2024 is one of these years where the potential of a lot of these projects will actually be sort of worked out, and we'll actually sort of see this. So they say they have over 200 games signed up for their who are using their technology. They're actually running on Polygon now. It's all very blockchain. I won't explain all that. But basically, they are sort of providing a platform where any developers can turn up. Immutable sort of handles all the messy blockchain stuff, and you just integrate your game. I guess everyone's heard of Animoca Brands. They are the sort of quintessential blockchain game sort of portfolio, ETF, however you want to describe them. Interestingly, started out as the Chinese licensor for CryptoKitties. So back in 2018, that's how they got into blockchain. Since then, they've really sort of taken advantage of the potential of the market, raised almost $900 million in revenue, in investment, invested in over 400 companies, involved in stuff like the Sandbox, and now building up this sort of Mockaverse NFT sort of platform, which started out as NFTs and now is sort of becoming a sort of ecosystem in and of itself, linking all these games together. So Sky Mavis, the company behind Axie Infinity, everyone's heard of Axie Infinity. Everyone has an opinion about Axie Infinity. But I think the interesting thing about Sky Mavis in 2023 was 2022 was a pretty awful year for them. Not only did Axie Infinity sort of explode up and down and outwards, they got hacked by the North Koreans. But 2023, it sort of shows that, the commitment of people who really believe in blockchain and gaming, just to sort of build stuff. And obviously that's partly their Ronin blockchain, which we've mentioned being successful with Pixels. But they're still plugging away with Axie, so there's two different sort of versions of Axie now. There's some sort of extension to that, so a farming game called Axie Homelands. It's just sort of coming into open beta. A few other things as well. But we're really seeing sort of the synergy of having a hit game, of having blockchain infrastructure, of having a lot of value locked in that system. Again, 2024, we're going to see things like Ronin and Immutable and all these other sort of chains a little bit competing for sort of headlines and competing to get games launched and successful. And I think probably at the moment, because of Pixels, sort of the Ronin blockchain is sort of the one that everyone's trying to get on at the moment. But there can only be one. I wonder if anyone knows who it is. I won't ask for raised hands, because there might be someone I've forgotten who it isn't. No, my clicker stopped. Interesting.
There's no number one.
There is no number. Yeah, that would be the reveal, wouldn't it? You create your own number one. No, there is a number one.
On the way, we on the way. Need that money on the lay. Okay, no, I don't play. No. Hit the blunt and fly away. I want you to come and stay, but if you stay, you gon' have to make it. We about to make it.
Okay, Mythical Games. Hopefully this will be a controversial choice, because there's no point doing a top 50 if you can't be controversial with the number one. But I think it is a fully justified choice, and I will happily defend it to anyone in the pub afterwards. So Mythical Games, again, I think another trend we've seen really in the top 10. A company who've been around since 2018. So a lot of the companies who are now sort of coming to, I think, fulfill their potential have really been around the space. They've really been sort of kicked around. They've really gone through the challenges, and hopefully now going to take some of these sort of successes. And I think the interesting thing with Mythical Games is a lot of the footage there was from a game called Blanco's Block Party, which was a PC game, sort of a little bit UGC, a little bit Fall Guys. And I loved that game and collected a lot of the NFTs, but it didn't quite work. It was a PC game, and they got to about 1 million sort of players, and they couldn't really get to 2 million players. And I think, if you're in the blockchain game space, one of the things you have to, get in your DNA quickly is how to deal with, quite serious challenges to your business. And so Mythical Games with Blancos decided they were going to sort of, pretty much kill the PC version, and they're reimagining it for mobile. So this year, Blancos Mobile will come out, which will take all those assets from the PC game, all the, wallets, everything will be moved over. So that's sort of one thing. But I think the reason that I really liked what they were doing in 2023 was this sort of shift to mobile, and they have 2 games out in the app stores at the moment. So there's Nitro Nation, Paul from CM Games here, talked to him about that, and one called NFL Rivals. And as a sort of game, I would say it's not the most exciting American football game out there, but as a game that went through the app stores, launched in the summer, had no blockchain in it at all, and then every sort of major release since then, there's more blockchain gone in there. So first you had the ability to sort of get NFTs from gacha boxes, then you had the ability to buy specific NFTs. The NFTs are all licensed American football players that you use to increase the strength of your team. And the next update will have a full peer-to-peer marketplace, so you can buy and sell NFTs within an app that goes through the Apple and Google Play stores. So that is where you find the mass market audience, as we've sort of been saying this morning. For blockchain games, to go mass market, you need to be where the mass market audience is. And I'm not saying every blockchain game needs to have a mass market audience. Absolutely not. I don't think that's the case at all. But if you do want to attract a mass market audience, you need to be in the app stores, I think. And I think Mythical Games is absolutely in the vanguard of doing that. And I think as part of that process, they are getting Apple and Google happy with what blockchain means in apps. Partly has to do with monetization. And I think this comes back to something I mentioned and something that Mythical Games really talk about a lot and have always spoken about. And they've never spoken about blockchain. They've never really spoken about tokens. All that sort of stuff for them is really in the background. For them, it's, do you think that players owning their own stuff in games is going to make them enjoy the games more, play the games longer, and pay more in those games? And I think for most people in the for most people in the blockchain game sector, the answer to that is yes, which is why we're here. I think we're starting to prove that now, and I think we're starting to see that with games like NFL Rivals that are going to mass market audiences, and maybe people are buying things in there that they don't know are NFTs, and that's part of the education experience. And I think not only are the games really good and interesting and fun, they're also sort of pushing forward the industry, and that's I think where we are with the blockchain game sector. It is about product, it's about great games, but also about technology. Won't go into all their blockchain stuff. They've got a blockchain that's being built out on Polkadot. So they have the sort of the technology sort of chops as well. But it's all about basically getting players in your game, owning stuff, trading it, and enjoying and playing the games longer. So that's the top 50 for this year. As I say, I'm sure people have opinions on it. But it's a sort of mark in the sand, and we'll see where we end up next year. Thank you very much.